What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to get into my top must-start running backs for week 10 of the fantasy football season. I almost forgot what week we were in, but we're going to be talking about running backs. Now, in weeks past, we did my favorite running back starts and sits, where I would talk about my favorite starts, my favorite sits of the week. Then I did some rankings videos. You guys liked those. For whatever reason, last week's rankings videos didn't do amazing, and on top of that, I don't enjoy making those videos as much. I can't dive as deep as I would like to with these players. You guys know that I really do pride myself on giving you guys, in-depth analysis where I'm really out here, not just, going through the motions, listing off 24 players, whatever. I want to sit here, give you guys, the good stuff. I want you guys to know Ron Stewart fantasy football analysis as, creme de la creme. So today, we're going to talk about my favorite starts of the week because we all know, if you have Jonathan Taylor, if you have Austin Eckler, those guys are going to be in your lineup. But I wanted to talk about the guys that are more in the RB2, RB3, RB4 categories, especially for you guys out there that watched me early on in the offseason that have, zero RB, hero RB kind of teams where, you are kind of streaming RB2 and scrapping things together. So we're going to talk about more of my fringe, favorite running backs to start this week. Now, before we get into that, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. We post daily fantasy football content on this channel, even more than daily content on this channel. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool.
Now, before we get into our first must-start running back, I actually meant to ask a question for you guys on the last video I put out. So that was the trade targets video. And I love putting those videos out every week. They're one of my favorites to make because, it's a lot of research and kind of, making your claim against the market. But it just hit me before I hit the record button that we are now in week 10. Trade deadlines are coming up. So let me know when your trade deadline is so I know I can get out ahead of it and be like, okay, week 13, we're done with the trade target videos. We'll move on to rest of season stuff. Maybe we'll move the rest of season video. I've been doing rest of season videos on Saturday. Maybe we move that back to Wednesday and then we do another dynasty video on Saturday. Also look out. We're going to be doing my top 24 running back and wide receiver rankings for dynasty. That should be coming out Friday and Saturday. So be on the lookout for that. Now, our first must-start running back is James Conner. He's going to be at home against Carolina. And it's not so much a juicy matchup here, but I just wanted to outline James Conner because I know some of you guys might have him, and we have the Chase Edmonds injury, right? And that's going to put him in a spot where you guys are going to be, okay, I need to start him. But I just wanted to highlight the degree of which, he is now a baller. He's not just, he's now, a nice, fringe RB2 guy that maybe I'll try and get in the lineup. If you have James Conner, he needs to be in your lineup. He is an RB1 moving forward as long as Chase Edmonds is hurt. Last week, Chase Edmonds goes down. Rest in peace to Chase Edmonds. I love that guy. But James Conner became a workhorse. He became Steelers James Conner. He saw 52 snaps, 21 carries, 5 targets. He scored 40.3 fantasy points on the 49ers, who are stingy against opposing running backs. They only allow the 7th least amount of points to opposing running backs, and that's with that huge game, factored in. Without that, they're probably, top 5 in allowing fantasy points to opposing running backs in terms of being pretty strong against the run. And I kind of think as much as I kind of give guys like James Conner shit for being older and being older running backs kind of becoming dust, I think the guy can probably still play. I mean, he looked great last week. He was an RB1 on the Steelers. He's going to see targets, the goal line carries. He's going to see everything that we want from our running back in one of the top offenses in the NFL. Like I said, he is a top 12 option. Now, he doesn't have a juicy matchup against the Panthers. I wouldn't call it juicy, you know what I mean? But it's a matchup where they're at home. They're 10.5-point favorites. The Panthers are going to be using PJ Walker, their backup quarterback. Who knows how many points they're going to score. And the Panthers quietly have this defense that kind of filters things to the run. They have the 4th best pass DVOA defense with, I want to say Stephon Gilmore is back there. They only have the 19th best run defense. So it does kind of filter things to the run. And I think they lean on James Conner here. Kyler Murray's either going to be out, he's hobbled. It's going to be a light matchup with Colt McCoy there, if not Kyler Murray. So I like them, at home, big favorites against Carolina. I like James Conner as, a fringe top 12 option. Then my next running back on my must-start list, we're going to have 5, hardcore must-starts, and then I'm going to have a couple of guys that are fringe, RB3, RB4 plays for the really deep plays out there. But number 2 on our list is D'Ernest Johnson in New England. The entire running back backfield now has COVID. Nick Chubb tested positive for COVID. Demetric Felton tested positive for COVID. I want to see even John Kelly, the kid out of Tennessee that I know had some high hopes coming out of Tennessee. He also has COVID. D'Ernest Johnson is literally their only running back on the roster at this point, which means there's going to be a lot of touches. I will say my one concern with D'Ernest Johnson is he was probably in that running back room, so Maybe he gets COVID, but I mean, now we're at Wednesday. This report came out, I want to say Monday or Tuesday. So he should be good, but that's just a little bit of something to keep, in the back of your head, is that maybe he could, get symptoms, a day or two later. Who knows how that works? But D'Ernest Johnson is a player that I didn't think was that great. His prospect profile sucks. He's like an undersized running back who runs a 4.8. It's crazy, but he started a game against the Broncos. He had like a 90 PFF grade. He had 24 touches, 168 yards, a touchdown, 24.8 PPR points in week 7. That was when Chubb and Hunt were out, the Thursday night game against the Broncos, I believe, which is just insane. Like, the guy had a legitimate, underdog type story. He was like texting XFL team. So it's a really cool story to see that. But we're now going into a week where the whole backfield is screwed. So he is going to see similar usage. Now, is it going to be a game script where he sees 24 touches? Who knows? But in this offense, when you have such a good offensive line, when they're really centered around the run, especially giving both Wyatt Teller, Joel Bitonio, the two guards, contract extensions, we're going to have tons of running lanes. The offensive line is really good. So I think that with no one else in the backfield, I think you'll see somewhere in the range of, 15 to 20 touches against the Patriots. Now, the Patriots are actually pretty good against the run, but I think he's still going to have, 15 to 20 touches behind one of the league's best offensive lines. They just extended Wyatt Teller. They extended Joel Bitonio. That offensive line is going to be up there wanting to, make it known that their money has been earned. So I like him as a top 15 option based off of volume, based on what we saw from him against the Broncos a few weeks ago. So I really like D'Ernest Johnson as like a top 15 option this week. Now, before we get into our third running back on this list, I want to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. We've been rocking with them since the offseason. And I just want to let you guys know, you're watching this video on Thursday. We got the Dolphins versus Ravens game. Kind of a boring game. I imagine maybe you have some players, but I mean, unless you have like Jalen Waddle, like Lamar Jackson, if you want to make the game a little bit more juicy, you can hop on Underdog Fantasy, use my promo code ROM when you deposit $10 or more, and Underdog will match your deposit all the way up to $100. You could deposit $50, they'll give you $50 back. You'll have $100 in your balance. They have pick'ems, so like over-unders, receiving yards, fantasy points, all that good stuff. They have drafts, so if you want to draft a team, do kind of like a DFS style tournament. They also have college football that you could do pick'ems for. They have esports. If you're into, if you're into like League of Legends and that kind of stuff, they have pick'ems for that, which is crazy. I imagine like the best sports handicappers in the world are probably out there, making like 54%, 55% on like the most efficient markets, right? So that's like over, under, spreads, all that stuff. I can't imagine that esports is a really efficient market. If there was one market where I had the time to sit down and analyze and like want to make money, I imagine that esports and that those like untapped markets that don't have, all the eyes watching them or like all the analytics that are fairly new, that's probably where the profit and where the money is. So I would go check that out. So again, make sure you use my promo code RON when you deposit $10 or more, and Underdog will match your deposit all the way up to $100 today. Our third running back on this list is going to be Josh Jacobs at home against the Kansas City Chiefs. And this one's pretty simple. I mean, the guy now has 3 straight top 24 PPR finishes. As much as I am not a big fan of Josh Jacobs, you guys know I didn't like him coming into the season. He's been hurt all over the place, but this is a pretty juicy matchup. The Chiefs are the 4th worst in rush DVOA on defense, and this should allow Jacobs, kind of do his thing. I like Josh Jacobs to have, a classic Josh Jacobs stat line, go out there, 65, 70 yards on like maybe like 17 carries and like a touchdown. I think, in a game where the over-under is pretty high at 51.5, he is going to be in a spot where he's going to be on the goal line a couple times. He's just a nice, top 15 to 20 running back that just feels solid in a spot in the season where we are starting just absolute no-names in our running back spot. I think I have to start like Ty Johnson in a league. It's getting ugly in these streets. So I think, again, Josh Jacobs isn't a bad play, which brings me to Devin Singletary in New York playing at MetLife. And I really like Devin Singletary this week. The Bills just came off probably one of the most embarrassing losses that they've had since, like the 3 back-to-back Super Bowls where they lose in Super Bowl. They lose to the Jaguars and Urban Meyer in a 9-6 game when they have all these offensive weapons. Josh Allen, all he could do was score 6 points on the Jaguars. I think they're going to come out here against my Jets and just take all their frustration out on the Jets. They're 13-point favorites. They just lost in a really embarrassing game. It just would make sense for them to, just kick their little brother around and, beat us by literally 20 to 30 points. And the thing with the Bills right now is that I saw a really interesting conversation between Ben Gretsch and Rich Rebar. 2 guys way smarter than I am, way bigger than I am, but they brought up some really good points that against the Jaguars, the Bills weren't able to, establish the run. And they stopped them similar to how teams are stopping the Chiefs right now, where they play too high, They back off, they don't load up the box, and they invite you to pass. When you do that, the best way to counter that is to run the ball. But neither of these teams have run offenses with good running backs where they can exploit light boxes, and that's the problem. You need to punish these defenses with your running game. And as much as I am, team nerd, team pass the ball as much as you can, I like having, high neutral pass rates. When teams invite you to run, it is better to run, so at least they respect the run, they come down, they load the boxes again. But with a team like the Bills, when they couldn't do that, they only ran the ball 9 times, and quietly the Jaguars are really good against the rush as well, so that kind of factored into it. The Jags are the 8th best team in rush DVOA, so they really gave the Bills a problem in terms of running the ball. The thing is, though, we look forward to this week. My Jets are 31st in that category. They're going to have no problem establishing the run on the Jets, so I like Singletary here because last week, he kind of came out ahead of Moss. He played 71% of the snaps, which was 8th in the NFL, and Moss got some kind of injury, so Zach Moss might not even suit up, and if he does, I think Singletary gets a nod ahead of him. And the part that has me most excited is that he led the league in routes run last week among running backs. He had 34 routes ran. He had 8 targets for 7 catches and 43 yards through the air. That's a ton of PPR points, and PPR was at 7 plus 4.3. That's like 11.3 points through the air. Now, I know it won't be a negative game script where they're going to have to, pass the ball down and get Devin Singletary involved in the game that much, but the Bills also have the highest neutral pass rate in the league. So if Singletary can't get it going between the tackles, he's going to be insulated in the idea that, okay, so he can't get it going between the tackles, they're struggling a little bit, then he can get going in the passing game, especially because the Jets struggle against pass-catching running backs. The Jets are the 2nd worst defense in DOCE. This is a really cool metric by Fantasy Intervention over there, fantasyintervention.com. But DOCE is dump off containment efficiency, which basically just, figures out how bad our defense is against pass catching running backs. The Jets are the 31st team against pass catching running backs. So Devin Singletary can have an absolute field day on them in terms of pass catching the ball, in terms of running between the tackles. There is no facet of the game that the Jets can stop an opposing running back. And if Moss misses any time, because of this, I like Devin Singletary as a top 15 play. If Moss does play, I still think that Devin Singletary is a strong, back-end RB2 play in a really, really soft game environment. Our last must-start is a guy that plays tonight, Myles Gaskin, at home against the Baltimore Ravens. I want to say, this is something off the top of my head, I want to say maybe it was last year, but he definitely has been someone that balls out on Thursday night games. I could have sworn he had a game last year, maybe against the Jaguars, where he balled out. I could be wrong. I could be 100% wrong. I could have sworn that he had a game on Thursday night where he went crazy. But a lot of things are looking up for Myles Gaskin. And I've always been a believer in the talent of Myles Gaskin. He is really good. I just have a bias, or I don't personally have a bias against low draft capital running backs, because I believe that running backs should be drafted later on in the NFL draft. You shouldn't be paying up first-round picks. So like Saquon Barkley was a bad pick. You shouldn't be paying premium picks for running backs that ultimately don't matter in the outcome of games. Like if you go down the list of like Super Bowl winning running backs, it's an absolute shit show of running backs. So with that, I would be drafting running backs late, and I actually like the profiles of late running backs. The problem is these coaches don't respect the late round running backs. Guys like James Robinson did all he could in his first year, and Urban Meyer comes in, drafts a running back in the first round, just gives a big, F you to the guy. Nah, James Robinson, I respect you, but Travis Etienne's coming in. Now that hasn't panned out, but these coaches, because they didn't invest like a high, monetary value or a high draft capital value in that player, they have no problem pulling him after a fumble or after somebody else looks good. They just have no allegiance to these running backs. But finally, Myles Gaskin is getting that respect on his name. He just saw an 86.7% opportunity share. He saw 15% target share. Now, does this hold up when Malcolm Brown comes back from IR? I'm not sure, but we have a Thursday night game, which means it's a short week. He still hasn't been activated from IR, so I highly, highly doubt he plays on Thursday, which would be today. So if we're getting Myles Gaskin without Malcolm Brown out there, that means that we're getting a guy that should see upwards of a 70% opportunity share in this game. He has 3 top 12 finishes in his last 5 games, and he has this massive spike upside. He is kind of boom or bust, so he is a little bit of a risk play, but I think he's going to get the volume this week. The Ravens aren't, in years past, they've been this defense that is like this hard-nosed defense with Ray Lewis, and after that, they had like CJ Mosley, and they always have, these big linebackers. They can stop the run, play really good defense. They're allowing the 8th most fantasy points to opposing running backs right now. So they're not exceptionally good against the run at this point. I think that Myles Gaskin's a back-end RB2 with the upside to, score 25-plus points, have that top 5 upside this week. Now, let me know how you guys feel about this format when we're talking about, I'll have my top 5 must-starts, and then I'm going to go through a couple guys that I have as my desperation starts. So these are guys that I have, outside of the top 24, but guys that I like in their matchups that I feel strongly about as pretty good plays in the running back position. And first up, we have Devonta Freeman, who's going to be in Miami in that same game on Thursday night. And as long as Latavius Murray is out, I like Devonta Freeman's workload. He looked good last week. I want to say he had like 13 carries, 79 yards. He had a touchdown. He had another really strong week in fantasy. They're minus 7.5 point favorites against the 7th worst defense to opposing running backs in Miami. So I think they're probably going to run the ball a ton on them. Probably not going to have a lot of resistance against the run. I like him to score a touchdown. If you want to put an anytime touchdown score bet on Devonta Freeman, feel free to do that. But if he doesn't score a touchdown, don't come back and say, "Oh, but you told me to do this." I don't want that mustard on my shirt. So I think he's a fringe RB2 type play, Devonta Freeman. Then we have J.D. Mckissic, who's going to be at home against Tampa Bay. This is one of the higher over-unders on the slate. The Bucs are 9.5 point favorites, and I'm still not sure what the deal is with Antonio Gibson. Did he get a bye week to get healthy? Sure, but we still don't know if he's fully healthy or kind of what his workload is going to look like. He did just come off a week where he got out-targeted by Mckissic. He got out-carried by Jarrett Patterson, so we're still unsure of what's going on with Gibson, and I think at the very least, McKissic will be playing all third downs, all 2-minute situations. There's going to be a ton of third and longs. There's going to be a ton of garbage time, 2-minute situations, all that good stuff in this game script for J.D. Mckissic. And while the Bucs are really good against the run, we know the Bucs are insane against the run, but they are the 4th worst in that metric I showed before, right? So the dump-off containment efficiency metric, right? They are actually pretty bad against pass-catching running backs. So I think that if there was ever a time for one of those McKissic explosion games where he had that one, maybe it was against the Falcons, where he took like a swing pass and like dove into the end zone. If there was ever a time for like a McKissic, and he had the one on the Thursday night game against the Giants too. But if there was ever a time for, like an 8-catch, 70-yard, and a touchdown game from McKissic, I really like him this week. He is a firm RB3 for me. Then our last running back on this list is Mark Ingram in Tennessee. And for whatever reason, Sean Payton loves Mark Ingram. I love him too. But Kamara went from playing 80% of the snaps, during the season. Ingram comes in, he goes down to playing 66% of the snaps. Ingram's playing about a third of the snaps, and he's had a pretty big role here. And Kamara sustained an ankle injury. Not a lot of people are talking about it, but Kamara, people are talking about him saying that he might have sustained a high ankle injury. And he sustained a high ankle injury not in 2020, but in 2019, and he was out for like 6 to 7 weeks with it. Now, they haven't said anything about him missing time yet, but if the ankle injury is anything serious, if it makes it so he's only playing, instead of 66% of the snaps, he's playing, 40% of the snaps, Mark Ingram is a decent, RB3 type play on the road against Tennessee. Now, that's going to do it for us today, fellas. If at any point in time during the video you enjoyed it, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. It helps out your boy a ton. Also, if you want access to all of these rankings, so maybe you have James Conner and you have, like a James Robinson, you want to know who to start them, I have on the Patreon, I go through every single week. I do weekly rankings, rest of season rankings. On my weekly rankings, I have PPR, 0.5 PPR, standard, super flex, flex. So if you have James Conner versus DJ Moore, I have that as well. All of that on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. It'll be in the description. It'll be down below in the comments. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yep. Juice, 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 juice. Yup. 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 Yup.